Hello everybody, it's Jess here with Blessed Jess. Thank you so much for watching. Who is ready for Lucy's birth story? So if you've missed, we have done our miscarriage story, which I will link down below. We have done our Nader Tater's birth story, which I will link down below. And today we're going to do Miss Lucy's birth story. And I'm going to try to make this as concise as possible as I'm remembering everything. And I just love having these memories documented because it's so easy to forget all the details. I wish I had done it like right after she was born. Of course, I wasn't on YouTube then, but it would have been nicer because I know I'm going to forget things. Okay, so let me talk about pregnancy and all that, and then we'll get into her birth story. So Nate was almost 2. Actually, he was only, when we found out we were pregnant, he was only like 18, 19 months old. Is that right? I think that's right. Yeah, that was right. So he was a little guy. We had just moved into our brand new house like a few months before, and we weren't trying to have a baby. We were not trying to get pregnant. We had just had our first Christmas in our new house. We weren't actually in there on Christmas Day. We were traveling and stuff. We traveled to Alabama to see family. We were living in San Antonio, Texas. And we got home from Christmas, and it was actually David's birthday, January 5th. Did I say January 5th? January 6th. Yes, I do know his birthday. I just misspoke. And I woke up that morning, and I was just thinking, like, I feel like my period should have already started. And I was trying to remember exactly when I'd had my last period, and I couldn't really remember. I knew it was like around that same time in December because we had a lot of projects around that time. We were filming stuff for our Christmas production at church. And so I remember being on my period during that time where we were filming. And so I was like, I think it was right around this time last month. And my periods usually are pretty consistent, although I hadn't written it down, and so I didn't know exactly. I was just like, it's really weird. I feel like I should have already started my period. So I kind of woke up feeling like that. And I remember thinking, I'm probably not pregnant. We're not trying to have a baby, so I'm probably not pregnant. And I was a little freaked out. Honestly, I can't be pregnant, right? So I went and I got a test, and I took the test in our bathroom, and I can't remember exactly what time of day it was or anything. I want to say it was David was home, so I want to say it was evening time. Or afternoon time. It might have been a Monday. I can't remember why he was home. If he was home because he already had got off work, or if he was home because it was his off day. So I took the test, and it showed that I was pregnant. It showed the line darker than Nate's, because Nate's, remember, I took it before I'd even had a chance to start my period. I was really early on with him because we were trying. So with Lucy, her pregnancy, it was a line, and the test had just come out where they would tell you how far along you were. They have certain tests that'll tell you your however many weeks based on how strong the hormone was or whatever. So I remember going out and buying one of those because I honestly couldn't remember exactly when my period was. They were going to make me wait, I think, because Nate had a healthy pregnancy. They didn't get me in as early as after my miscarriage. I think I was going to go in at 9 or 10 weeks. So I had another month or so. And I was I hope that I told them the right date, as I was kind of guessing the date of my last period. So I went out and got one of those tests, and it said I was 5 or 6 weeks pregnant, I think, or maybe 5 weeks. So again, I had all these intentions of telling David in a really creative way the next time we got pregnant, because with Nate, I just ran out and put the stick in his face, and said, oh my God, it's pregnant, we're pregnant. So with Lucy though, I was so shocked and freaked out that I just went and told him we're pregnant. And it was actually on his birthday, which was quite the birthday present. And I remember us calling our friends and family, or not, well, I told my best friend, I told Jen that night. And the only other people we told were our parents. And I remember just being oh my God, we're pregnant. It wasn't even a creative way of saying it. I think I told my mom, oh my God, I'm so freaked out. And she said, why? And I said, I'm pregnant. Just because Nate was so little, we had just moved into our new house. I was just Like, oh my gosh. And so I text Jen, like, can you keep a secret or something? And she was like, what? And so she called me and I told her, and we were really excited, but we were going to wait a little while. I wanted to wait until we at least had the ultrasound picture of the heartbeat before we started telling everybody, because I'd had a miscarriage before Nate, and having to tell everybody we had a miscarriage was really, really hard. So I wanted to make sure that, not that things can't happen after you hear the heartbeat, but you have a lesser of a chance of bad things happening. So we went in to see the heartbeat. And like I said, I was like 9 or 10 weeks pregnant when we went in, and we were able to see the heartbeat right away. I remember Nate was in there with us. He was so little, and I just couldn't believe, like, oh my gosh, yep, it's real. Like, there's the baby. And so because I'd had a healthy pregnancy, I didn't have to see the doctor every 2 weeks anymore. I think it was like every month at first. And so it actually went by so fast, her pregnancy did, because I had a little baby at home. I remember not being too nauseous or anything. The hardest part with her was that I was so tired. And I forgot to say that with Nate's pregnancy. I was so tired. That's how I am when I'm pregnant. I think that's how everyone is. I just felt tired, like I could sleep all day. Well, with Nate, even though I was working, I had a lot of time where I could just sleep and rest. I had an 18, 19-month-old. So I was not resting. And that was the hardest part. And we lived away from family and all of that. And so I didn't have any help. I was staying home, and he was with me all the time. So her pregnancy went really smooth. I remember the day, but we wanted to find out her gender, just like we found out Nate's, and I didn't talk about that at all, but it wasn't too, like, we didn't care. Like with Nate, it was like boy or girl, whatever. When they said it's a boy, I remember just feeling like, yay, like so exciting. With Lucy, I wanted a healthy baby. I would have been perfectly happy with a boy. But I remember praying, like, God, I will be so thankful whichever you give me. But my heart of hearts, I even told God, like, I want a little girl. I want the mother-daughter relationship. I want someone that I can teach how to be a lady and teach how to be a woman of God. I just felt like I wanted a girl, like everything in me. I would have been perfectly happy with a boy, but there was a deep desire in my heart to have a girl. And I remember just being really nervous when we went in. I didn't want to feel disappointed. I didn't want them to say it's a boy and me feel disappointed. So I tried to keep very neutral, but in my heart of hearts, I wanted a girl. And we went in for the ultrasound, and she asked if I wanted to know, and I said yes. And immediately she said, she did the ultrasound, like, and immediately she was like, it's a girl. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, it's a girl. I was so excited. David was so excited. It's like, we have one of each now. This is perfect. We had all boys on both sides of our family. Growing up, I always was the only girl cousin. David's family had all boys. Like, we're used to boys. We're not used to girls. Even though now that I do have some nieces now, it's funny, but back before all of us were having babies, my brothers and sister-in-laws were having babies, there was only boys. And so when they said it was a girl, I just couldn't believe it. And the pregnancy went great up until about 32 weeks. 32 weeks, I woke up one morning, it was a Saturday, and my whole body felt like it was on fire. I was like itching, but not just itching, like my whole, like, I can't even describe it. It was like this internal itching. It was mostly on my arms. I felt like I could claw my arms off. And of course, immediately I start Googling, what does it mean when you're itching? There's some less harmful reasons you could be itching. But immediately I stumbled across this thing called ICP, and it's intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy. And basically, it's where a woman's body, her liver, starts making too many bile acids, and it's very, very dangerous. The only cure for it is delivery. They're not exactly sure why it happens. It's a fairly new condition in that they're just learning about it. So a lot of doctors don't even know what it is. And the scariest part is it's extremely deadly for the baby. The further along the mom goes, the more likely that it could result in a stillbirth, which is where the baby dies. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, could I have this? We called my doctor. There was an on-call doctor. She wasn't on call. And so they said, no, you need to come to the hospital. We need to test you for this condition. And it's super, thank goodness my doctors knew what it was and were able to test me. I went in. They didn't want us to bring Nate. We had no one to watch the baby. He was so little. I didn't want to be by myself. It was a Saturday. So everybody, like a lot of our friends and stuff, are busy doing things. We had no family. So we kind of had to bring Nate to the labor and delivery unit at the hospital. And David stayed with me for a little while, and then he had to take him. My best friend Jen was so awesome. She was busy with something, but she took him for a few hours for us. And I was at the hospital by myself for a little while they were running tests, because David had to go get, like, we left without our phone chargers. It was like crazy. And so he had to take Nate to Jen. He was getting some things. And so I was at the hospital and I was terrified. They ran the test at first. They just ran my liver enzyme test, and they said, these are kind of high. So we're going to do the bile acids test, which that takes several, like it takes like a week to get in the results before they can actually say, yes, you have cholestasis. So while those tests were being run, they wanted to keep me and monitor the baby and make sure she was okay. So I remember they said, we're going to go ahead and admit you, which I was terrified of it. We're going to keep you, actually stayed 2 nights. And they did some ultrasounds. They did lab work, blood work, a lot of NSTs, non-stress tests, and they really want to make sure that she's okay. But the scary thing about cholestasis is that for one minute the baby can be okay, and then the next minute, it happens fast, and they don't really know why, but they want to make sure that she was okay. The next minute, babies die. And so they kept me for 2 nights, which was hard because the next day was Sunday. Y'all, David's a pastor, and Sunday is like game day, and so he couldn't just miss to come be with me. So he took Nate home on Saturday night. I was at the hospital by myself. And he took Nate to church by himself, and he put me on FaceTime during worship because I was just so lonely. I was so afraid, and just being in service with him really helped. So he put his little iPad on the piano, and I got to watch worship, and that really helped. I was so afraid. They were coming in every 2 or 3 times a day and doing the NSTs where they were watching her heart rate and stuff and making sure she was okay. All the tests that they did on her came back that she was perfect, that she was healthy, and they just wanted to continue that. So my doctor was gone that whole weekend. I really wish she had been on call that weekend. But I had an appointment the next Monday for Monday or Tuesday for an appointment for to go in anyway, to go see her. So they didn't really want to let me go home, but there wasn't much they could do until we got the results back from the test. And so I kind of said, hey, I'm going in on Monday to see my doctor. Are y'all okay with me going home until I can go see her and see what she thinks? Because really there wasn't much they could do anyway. And so the on-call doctor went ahead and let me go home. And so I had spent 2 nights in the hospital, and maybe just 1 night. I don't know. I was ready to get out of there because I was there by myself, and I was ready to get out of there. And so I went to go see my doctor the next day, and they had put a rush on the test. And so it should have been a week for me to get the results, and I got them I believe it was that day. So it had only been 2 or 3 days since I had taken the bile acids test. And so I told the doctor, hey, I was in the hospital this weekend with itching. And she was like, what? You are the easiest pregnancy ever. What are you doing? Are you trying to kill me? And she was so funny. And so I told her, what had happened. And she immediately got my results and said, yep, you have this. And I remember looking at her and saying, how freaked out do I need to be? Because I'm do I need to freak out here? And because I was terrified. And she said, nope, you don't need to freak out. You don't need to freak out. You're going to be fine. And she said, we are going to put you on some medicine, which they had already started me on at the hospital. She said, that's exactly what you need to be on. It's called urso. And she said, that will protect the baby. It lowers the bile acids. And she said, this is super important that you take. I took it like 3 times a day. And she said, and I was still in a lot of itching, and she's like, you can take Benadryl for that, which Benadryl did not help, but it did make me tired and I kind of could sleep through the itching. You're going to take that. And she said, you're going to come in twice a week for NSTs, and we're going to hook you up and we're going to check on baby. And at any moment that she is in distress, we're taking her out. And she said, also, with this condition, you need to be induced at 37 weeks. Going past 37 weeks, there's an increased risk of stillbirth, and we don't want that risk to happen. So at 37 weeks, we're induce you. So I had 4 weeks of hell, of being absolutely terrified that something bad was going to happen, that she was just going to die instantly. Like I felt her kicks, and they were like, I would really pay attention to how long has it been since she's kicked me. Do I need to be concerned? Thankfully, Lucy was very active, especially if I laid down, I could feel her kick a lot. And so that helped a lot to kind of reassure me. Going in for the stress test helped because I could know that her heart was beating, she was okay. But it was absolutely terrifying. Like I said, we had no family. I'm on Benedict. Well, we had family, but they weren't near us. And everybody wanted to wait to come home. They wanted to wait to come see us because they wanted to make sure that they were able to come when she was born. So I had at this point, Nate was over 2, and I had him, and I'm doped up on Benadryl, and I'm like all emotional all the time. And, I'm 33 weeks pregnant. And so we decided to put him in daycare. The church had a daycare where David worked, had a daycare. And so we put him in daycare. He didn't do so well. We didn't know he had autism at this point, which I am going to share the whole story about him being diagnosed with autism. But the daycare thing did not go well. He had been home with me his whole life. And so then he was thrown into daycare. And David pretty much had to get him out of class all the time. He wouldn't take naps. And so David would ride him around the car. Thankfully, David was in the same building. But I tried my best to just rest while he was at school and sleep because the Benadryl made me so tired. I was so emotional. It was just a really, really hard time. Some highlights though, my best friend threw me a surprise baby shower, and it was awesome. She is like my best friend for a reason. She's just amazing. And the best part, so none of my family or friends could be there from Alabama. And so she threw me this baby shower, and she had arranged all of my family and friends from Alabama to mail her baby shower gifts. This is what a great friend she is. So we had opened up all the presents from the people who attended the shower, which was a ton of people. Her whole living room, she had to take out all the furniture from her living room and put in tables and chairs. It was crazy. It was so packed. And I was so itchy that she was trying to crank down the air. I had to sit in a cool room all the time, or I was just miserable. But by the grace of God, it was not bad at the party at all. I was just so happy to see everybody, and all the work she had done. It was just amazing. So we'd opened up all the presents from everybody at the shower, and she's like, hold on a second. And she starts playing Sweet Home Alabama. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she brought out present after present after present of presence of people, family and friends that couldn't come because they were in Alabama. Oh my gosh, I totally did the ugly cry. I just lost it. It was the sweetest gesture. She had David's mom and my mom and my friend Shay from Indiana. She had them all on FaceTime, and it was just the best. So that was definitely a highlight. But I remember just every day just crying and praying that Lucy was going to be okay. We already had her name picked out. I had her name picked out before Nate's name. I always wanted a daughter named Lucy. And I was so worried about her. And then they were able to schedule her induction for August 21st. So I had that date and I was like, I'm going to make it to that. So August 21st came, and we had to get at the hospital real early, like 6 in the morning or something. So I remember waking up, and I had already kind of felt her kick. So I knew she was okay. And I'm like, we did it. We made it. We made it here. I hope she's okay. She's going to be born 3 weeks early. Nate was a week late. So I wasn't sure like how much she was going to weigh, if she would need to go to the NICU and all of that. And I know this video is getting long, but her story is so long. And so we went to the hospital. By this time, both sides of the family were there, but we left first. Everybody was going to stay back for a little while, let us get started. They had Nate. My mom and dad had Nate, and David's mom and dad were going to come later too. So David and I get to the hospital, and they hook me up to the monitor. This time my contractions, I actually am having contractions. By the time they hooked me up, and I'm 37 weeks, they're like, oh, you're contracting already, which I think my body was just, I think it knew there was something wrong in it and I needed to go into labor. That's just how I felt. Like it was a different pregnancy than Nate's was. And so I was contracting, and I think I was dilated like 2 or 3 centimeters. And so they said, do you want an epidural? And I was like, yes, I do. So they said, well, let's just wait a little bit and we'll get you the epidural. So they started Pitocin, and I remember it really picking up hard, like pretty fast. And I don't remember exactly at what point. I think they went ahead and gave me my epidural. I was like a 4 or 5, I want to say. They gave me an epidural, and immediately I could feel that it wasn't as good as the one I had with Nate. The pain completely went away. This one, I could still feel stuff low, like in my lower stomach, I could still feel it. I could feel when they broke the water, I was like, okay, I felt that way more than I should have. Like I could just feel like something wasn't right with the epidural. They broke the water. Unlike with Nate's, they were able to break the water because there was water there. And I remember like feeling so gross, like it's so gushy and gross. Oh, that might be TMI, but I just remember being so uncomfortable with that. And like every time I'd move, like more water would come out. It was so gross. I know. And the whole time I'm like, I'm hurting. And so they had called the anesthesiologist back, and she's like, I'll give you a booster of some pain medicine, and that should really help. Let me know if it doesn't. By the time she left the room, the contractions started so bad, and I had the epidural in, but I was like, something is not right. I'm screaming in pain. I was like 7 or 8 centimeters when my epidural really just failed. And I mean, I'm screaming. It is like the worst pain. I remember like my blood pressure going up really high, and my pulse, it was actually my pulse going up super high. And everybody's like, you've got to calm down. Your pulse is too high. I couldn't calm down. I was screaming. Everybody was like in my face, like, calm down, calm down. I'm like, get away from me. I am hurting so bad. And so my nurse like went and got the anesthesiologist, and like, you have got to come back in here. I had the best nurse. So they went back in, and they're like, I guess we're going to have to redo the epidural. And I'm like, fine, like whatever you need to do, like fix it. And she went to redo my epidural, and she's like, your epidural completely slipped out. You have no epidural in your body. That's what's causing the pain. So that wasn't fun. They had to redo the epidural. And the hardest part was I was in so much pain as they were starting the epidural that it was hard to be still and to arch my back and all that. But they finally got it in, and it worked this time. It was awesome. I started pushing. It only took a couple of pushes to get Lucy out. And when I got to 10 centimeters, of course, David was in the room with me again. My mom and dad had Nate, and David's mom and dad everybody kind of had Nate in the waiting room, and we were playing and stuff. And she was born. And I remember my doctor telling me, you just need to be aware that she could have to go to the NICU. Breastfeeding could be harder, all these different things because she's so early. And they put her up on me, and I saw how little she was, and I just was instantly in love just with Nate, just like Nate, just instantly in love with her. She weighed 6 pounds, 14 ounces, and I forgot to say Nate weighed 8 pounds even when he was born. And because she was early, the NICU team was already in there, and so they were listening to her and stuff, and they were like, she sounds a little like she's had like wet, like just something about it we're not liking. We're going to take her to the NICU and check her out. And I was okay with it. I was sad, was really sad because I didn't want anything to be wrong with her, but I was so relieved that she was here, and I knew she was going to be okay. She was crying, she was breathing. I knew she was going to be okay. I was so relieved. They took her, and they said that David could go with her. So David went with her. We have so many just adorable videos of him talking to her in the NICU. She was actually just never really in the NICU. She was in a transitional unit, and they watched her for about an hour or so. I got cleaned up. I remember calling my in-laws and saying, I'm so hungry. Can y'all bring me some food? they had Nate, or I don't remember. They weren't in the room with me at that point, and they brought me a Big Mac, and it was like the best tasting thing ever. I was starving. She was born we got to the hospital at like 6 or 7, and she was born at like 4 something. And I should remember the exact time, and I never can. It was so good. And then David called and said, you can come down and breastfeed her. They said you could. And it was a couple hours since I'd seen her, 2 or 3 maybe. And I went down, and it was just the best. She immediately started breastfeeding, and they said, we're going to go ahead and transfer her to your room. So she should be up there shortly. So I breastfed her for probably 30 minutes or more down in the transitional unit. And then they brought me to my room, and within just like an hour after being up there, they brought her to me, and she was fine, and she was perfect. And we were just in love with her. She was our miracle baby. And bringing her home and having 2 kids at once was super hard. There was lots of tears. Actually, my mom and dad took Nate home with them for like a week to kind of give us time to get used to being new parents again, because he was so little. And then I remember them both being with me for the first time, and she was a few weeks old, and by myself, they were with me, and I was just so tired and so emotional. Like, I cannot do this. They were both in diapers. Nate was super high maintenance and crazy and wild. And she was, actually, she had a lot of choking kind of incidents. We realized when she was a few months old that she had really bad acid reflux and had to get on several different medicines before we found the right one. But so there was a lot of, I didn't sleep because I was worried she was choking too much, and it was just crazy. That was maybe that's a whole nother story, because I know this video is getting super long, but I did want to make the point, if you or someone you know is pregnant and you have intense itching, you need to get help. And your doctor might not even know what it is. You need to look up ICP, intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy, and you need to advocate for yourself. That is, I firmly believe, what saved my baby's life, and lots of other babies have been saved by getting on the medicine, inducing early, doing the NSTs, and all of that. So it's super, super important. And I'm very thankful for a great outcome. And you guys know how beautiful and perfect Lucy is. I can't imagine my life without her. So that is Lucy's birth story. I hope I didn't leave anything out. I tried to remember every single thing I could. I loved being pregnant, but at the same time, it scares me, because if I were able to get pregnant again, the odds are that I could have pretty greatly that I would have ICP again. So it's scary. It's not unmanageable. There are things you can do that will lessen the risk of bad outcomes, but nothing is guaranteed, obviously. So I don't know. We'll have to just see. But anyway, that is Lucy's birth story. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. I'm sorry it got kind of long. Her birth story is a lot longer than Nate's. So if you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below. Please subscribe if you are new, and we will see you all later. Bye, guys.
You will always be there. There's no doubt in my mind. You will always be there, heading out to see ya and leave the rest behind. Oh, oh, 'cause you will always be there. Oh, oh, 'cause you will always